Good day. Commissioner Forrest here, Scotland Yard. I'm going to take you through a sample case so you can see just how to use the hints, notes, facts and clues in this game. This will help you understand what to write down and how to tie it all together when you play a real case. This sample case does not show up on your DVD. It is here to show you how information that the butler and the inspector tell you can narrow down your choices and point you in the right direction. In this example, we use an X to show when we've seen a card and can definitely eliminate it. We use a slash to show when something is probably not involved in the case, but we haven't seen the card yet to know for sure. At the beginning of this case, you are dealt the following cards: Prince Azure, Rusty, Dawn, Lunch, and Billiard Room. Because these cards are in your hand, you know for a fact they cannot be in the case file envelope. Mark these with an X on your clue pad to indicate that they have been eliminated from suspicion. A few turns later, you summon the butler, who says, "A few days ago, Rusty spilled an enormous vat of custard all over the kitchen. Mrs. White had to spend all day yesterday cleaning and waxing the floor, so no one was allowed in there until today." The butler's hint tells you that Mrs. White was cleaning the kitchen floor all day and that no one was allowed in. This implies that Mrs. White and the kitchen were not involved in the crime and are not in the case file envelope. Use a slash to indicate this suggestion. You can change the slash to an X when you verify the information after seeing the cards. After a few more turns, you summon the butler again. This time he tells you, "By the time I went to bed after midnight, all of the jewellery had been locked up and accounted for." This hint implies that since all of the jewellery was accounted for, none of it could have been stolen, and therefore none of the jewellery cards could be in the case file envelope. Mark all of the jewellery with slash marks until you verify the information by seeing the cards. This time you decide to look at an inspector's note. You flip to the back of the instructions and find the note. It reads, "Sometime after the guests had their tea, Mrs. Meadowbrook saw someone sneaking about looking quite suspicious." This could lead you to believe that the crime took place sometime after tea time. You have already eliminated Dawn and Lunch because you have these cards in your hand. Mark the remaining times before tea time with a slash. On your next few turns, you make suggestions and have eliminated some more information. Your clue pad now looks like this. You decide to look at another inspector's note. It reads, "Around midnight, Rusty discovered that one of the antiques was missing from its display case in the north wing." This note gives you a strong suggestion that the item stolen was an antique and it was taken from one of the rooms in the north wing. You use a slash to mark the other items and locations. You've already narrowed down a lot of the information, but you decide to summon the butler one more time. This time he says, "I'm embarrassed to tell you this, but I overheard Colonel Mustard, Professor Plum and Mr. Green arguing over who had the best collection of antiques. It was rather childish, to say the least. Nevertheless, one of them, I'm not sure who, was quite upset afterwards." From this hint, you deduce that your suspect was probably Colonel Mustard, Professor Plum, or Mr. Green. You put a slash next to the other suspects. At this point, your final notes are pointing towards who? Possibly Mr. Green, Professor Plum, or Colonel Mustard. What? Revolver, spyglass, or rare book. When? Possibly tea time, dusk, dinner, night, or midnight. Where? Hall or lounge. I hope this helped. Good luck to you.
All of Mr. Boddy's friends have gathered to welcome him back from his vacation after the tragic death of Boddy's attorney, Miles Meadowbrook. Mr. Boddy took several weeks off in the Mediterranean. He gambled in Monte Carlo, sailed the wine-dark seas, danced in Paris, and saw ancient ruins in Greece. He returned just in time to be robbed in his own mansion by one of his own guests. Not the ideal homecoming. I've just discovered that the item stolen was something Mr. Body had just bought on his vacation in Monte Carlo. I was just investigating when I found one of the items we are looking for. If you stop by the kitchen, I'll see if you are observant enough to take a look at it. Great Scott! What kind of madman are we dealing with here? I see you've dropped something. Don't worry, I'll bring it to the evidence room. Still, your investigation must be getting close. Keep at it. That's the spirit. I've found another one of those items we are looking for. If you stop by the lounge, I'll see if you are observant enough to take a look at it. Good gravy! Someone has dropped the revolver and it went off. If anyone has the revolver card, turn it into the evidence room immediately before someone gets hurt. If no one has the revolver now, don't worry about it.
Coming. Yesterday, Mr. Body wanted to show off all the items he's collected over the years, as well as his new items. I was told to display jewellery in the North Wing and antiques in the West Wing. Hello. Mr. Body was quite upset to notice that some items were either missing or stolen. He first approached me around the time it was getting dark to tell me something was missing. Good day. I do know that Prince Azure, Rusty, Professor Plum, and Mr. Green were all seen coming out of the kitchen before breakfast. For the life of me, I can't figure out what they were doing in there. Coming. Mr. Body asked me to display only one item per room. He thought it would be the best way to show off each of his valued items. Hello. The female guests spent the late morning together in the West Wing, examining the antiques. They were quite taken by each of the 3 items. Good day. If I recall correctly, Mr. Body was given the medal by his uncle, the late Dr. Black. Body is quite fond of it. Coming. Mrs. White told me that the key that opens the cases in which all of the valuables were displayed was missing from its hook in the kitchen by the time she served breakfast. She was quite beside herself to discover it was missing. Hello. Unfortunately, the pocket watch was damaged during Mr. Body's vacation. Fell off while he was boarding his yacht in the Mediterranean, I'm afraid. Since it was being fixed by the local repair shop, it was never in the mansion yesterday. It just got returned this morning.
Mr. Body gathered all of his friends together at his mansion for an end-of-summer garden party. Come enjoy the last of the summer sun, the invitation read. But apparently, someone in the house took advantage of the situation and committed theft. Someone had something else on his or her mind other than the weather. I was just investigating when I found one of the items we are looking for. If you stop by the fountain, I'll see if you are observant enough to take a look at it. Great Scott! What kind of madman are we dealing with here? I see you've dropped something. Don't worry, I'll bring it to the evidence room. Still, your investigation must be getting close. Keep at it. That's the spirit. I've found another one of those items we are looking for. If you stop by the billiard room, I'll see if you are observant enough to take a look at it. Something suspicious is going on outside. Any players who are on the east side of the house must immediately go to the fountain. Oh, wait. Sorry. False alarm. Carry on. I'm quite concerned about this rare book. If anyone has it, turn it into the evidence room immediately. Miss Scarlet said that she was in the lounge last night and that someone was moving about in a nearby room. She had a bit of a fright, I'm afraid.
Hello. Rusty told me that Lady Lavender left her jacket at the mansion yesterday during the party. I'm afraid this wouldn't be the first time she's done this. A bit daft, if you ask me. Coming. It's always so hectic when we have a party. I have to make sure to put out enough towels and get all of the guests their food as they lounge about outside. But they did make it easier on us by arriving right on time, just as lunch was being served. Good day. Mr. Green and Mrs. Peacock left during dinner, even before dessert was served. Hardly said goodbye to anyone. Strange. Hello. During tea time, all guests were sitting around the rose garden sunning themselves, probably just taking a much-needed break. Even Rusty and Mrs. White took a break to enjoy the sun. Coming. Dinner was a very informal affair with no real assigned seats, but I do remember that everybody was present. Good day. Lady Lavender was slightly uncomfortable during dinner and took her jacket off. It must have been the heat. I believe she put it on the back of her chair. I offered to hang it up, but she wanted to keep it near her. Hello. After dinner, I entered the study and noticed that someone had used the letter opener and spyglass because they were not in their usual place. I put them back on the shelf next to Mr. Body's pocket watch. I checked them throughout the night, but no one touched them again. Coming. I had complimented Lady Lavender on the jewellery on her jacket when she arrived. She told me that Mr. Body had let her borrow it for the weekend. He is really so generous. Both guests that arrived with her seemed especially impressed by it, almost overly interested.
As you all know, Mr. Body threw a party yesterday. A day of sport, he called it. Something to stir the circulation and challenge the mind. He had the staff line up all the usual games. Chess, croquet, billiards, darts, you get the idea. Unfortunately, sometime during the day, there was a theft. To make matters worse, the thief was one of the guests. For all Mr. Body's goodwill, someone was a very bad sport indeed. I was just investigating when I found one of the items we are looking for. If you stop by the study, I'll see if you are observant enough to take a look at it. It's come to my attention that the secret passages are locked. I've asked the butler to unlock them to facilitate our investigation. So, remove the padlocks from the board. You may travel freely through the secret passages now, but be careful. The passages could have their own dangers. I've found another one of those items we are looking for. If you stop by the ballroom, I'll see if you are observant enough to take a look at it. Oh, that was a narrow escape. Why don't I take something back to the evidence room? But don't give up now. You've got this villain on the run. I'm afraid that the investigation has become more complicated. It pains me to say this, but one of you is the thief.
Coming. For weeks, Prince Azure has been going on and on about how good he is at billiards. His boasts were quite irritating. I'm not ashamed to say that everyone delighted in watching Miss Scarlet beat Prince Azure 4 games to 1. Hello. Lady Lavender refused to play any games with Mrs. Peacock, accusing Mrs. Peacock of being a cheat. As you can imagine, it caused quite a stir. Apparently, they used to play bridge together and had quite a falling out over a misplaced ace up Mrs. Peacock's sleeve. Good day. One of the guests had the audacity to use Mr. Body's prized gold pen to keep score during the cribbage match. Afterwards, I made sure it was returned to Mr. Body, who kept it safely in his vest pocket. Coming. During meal times, all the guests gathered in the dining room to play charades. It was quite amusing, although some of the guests complained when Mr. Body stumped them with a book called The Great Gatsby by an American named Fitzgerald. They said it was unfair since they'd never heard of it before. Hello. During the afternoon, I noticed Mr. Body use the spyglass to watch the croquet match in the rose garden. Whoever was playing was rather awful and gave Mr. Body a good laugh. Afterwards, he returned the spyglass to its case and locked it up for the rest of the event. Good day. After they took their tea, all of the men decided to play poker in the lounge. They were enjoying themselves so much, it was all I could do to get them to break for dinner. They went right back to their card game afterwards and played for the rest of the night. Coming. I overheard Mrs. Peacock ask if anyone would play chess with her at night before going to bed. There were more than a few sighs. It had been a long day of games. Nevertheless, one person who hadn't played a game all day relented and said yes. Hello. During the poker game, I overheard Colonel Mustard and Mr. Green goading Mr. Body into betting more than just coins. Naturally, I was shocked. The Colonel was trying to get Mr. Body to put his medal into the pot, while Green was doing the same with the billfold. Mr. Body immediately locked both these items up just to get them to be quiet.
The hunt is an annual fall tradition at Mr. Body's mansion. Or so the butler tells me. All of Body's friends gather for a day of dining, socializing, and, of course, the main event itself, the hunt. But someone disrupted those plans. A thief decided they had other ideas about what was to be hunted at the mansion. I was just investigating when I found one of the items we are looking for. If you stop by the fountain, I'll see if you are observant enough to take a look at it. I've found another one of those items we are looking for. If you stop by the library, I'll see if you are observant enough to take a look at it. Great Scott! What kind of madman are we dealing with here? I see you've dropped something. Don't worry, I'll bring it to the evidence room. Still, your investigation must be getting close. Keep at it. That's the spirit. I need to see what evidence you have been collecting. Every player select one card to turn into the evidence room. Once everyone has chosen, turn in your cards. I'm happy to say that all of your alibis hold up. None of you are the thief.
Hello. I'm not sure if you're aware, but Colonel Mustard was the first to come downstairs just as breakfast was being served. He's always excited about the first hunt of the season, so it was no surprise to us to see him up so early. Coming. I'm not one to gossip, but there was a little spat over breakfast. Apparently, one of the guests did not appreciate hearing the details of our last hunt. I forget who, as people were in and out. It was quite a scene. Good day. Mrs. White told me something rather interesting. She was cleaning some room in the north wing yesterday afternoon and found broken glass. Of course, she wasn't happy about that at all. Hello. Mr. Green must have been up late the night before because he almost missed breakfast. He slipped in towards the very end, offering the usual apologies. Mrs. White said it was no bother, but the glare she sent him when his back was turned said otherwise. Coming. At dinner time last night, everyone sat down together, but I couldn't help sensing that there was a slight uneasiness amongst the guests. Who knows what the cause was? I think it was due to the hunt going poorly. Good day. As I prepared Mr. Body's hunting kit, I was able to find the spyglass and pocket watch that he uses every time he's on the hunt. Strangely, I could not find the last item I needed to complete his outfit. I do hope I find it soon. Hello. It's not my place to judge, but I have to say that the men ate like pigs at breakfast, devouring every little morsel. The women, on the other hand, were as ladylike as could be, hardly eating a thing. In fact, Mrs. Meadowbrook asked only for fruit juice before excusing herself and suddenly leaving. Coming. Yesterday was such a long day. After I finished my chores, right before midnight, I believe, I headed to bed exhausted. I'm sure I was the last one to retire. Everyone had been up early for the hunt and had already gone to bed.
I've been called to Mr. Body's mansion once again. A theft has taken place, this time when Body had invited all of his friends over for a relaxed late autumn weekend. There is a chill in the air. Winter is on the way, and a thief roams the halls of the mansion. I've concluded that it would have been impossible to steal anything when all the guests were together. I was just investigating when I found one of the items we are looking for. If you stop by the conservatory, I'll see if you are observant enough to take a look at it. Oh, that was a narrow escape. Why don't I take something back to the evidence room? But don't give up now. You've got this villain on the run. I've found another one of those items we are looking for. If you stop by the study, I'll see if you are observant enough to take a look at it. I've examined all of your alibis, and I'm afraid to say that I can't quite rule all of you out as a suspect. We must be on our toes. The thief is very likely one of you. Carry on.
Coming. After breakfast, I heard the gentlemen in the conservatory talking about books they had read. Of course, the Colonel is a fan of Kipling. The ladies were in the study just chit-chatting away, the usual gossip about the monarchy. Rumour has it that the Duke and Duchess of York are expecting a child. Hello. I was happy to see that all of the guests and staff arrived on time for our afternoon tea. Surprising, since they're not known for being the most punctual group. Good day. I served dinner, and everyone was seated almost at the same time. Mr. Body asked that I put on the gramophone so they could listen to some Mozart while they dined. What a nice, relaxing dinner it was. Coming. As I went to summon the gentlemen for lunch, I heard someone speaking very softly, almost whispering. Of course, this made me suspicious. I poked my head into the room, but it was only Mr. Body reading a passage from an old book to his guests. He's got quite a flair for drama, you know. Hello. It was just before midnight when Mr. Body went up for the night. The guests followed his lead and retired to their quarters at the same time. Good day. After lunch, I was looking out of the window from the ballroom when I saw a shadow of someone or something move in a nearby room, just out of the corner of my eye. I feel silly saying anything. It was probably just the cat. Coming. I know you'll think this is terribly nosy, but as I was serving lunch, I overheard the Professor and Lady Lavender making plans to take a walk in the grounds during the afternoon. Hello. During lunch, I also overheard Mr. Green and the Prince making plans to play billiards after lunch. I really don't make it my business to eavesdrop, you know.
It's Christmas time at the mansion, and all of Mr. Body's friends have gathered together to celebrate the season of giving. The butler informed me that Mr. Body was quite excited to give his friends presents. He had the gifts all locked safely away in the study. Unfortunately, in this time of festive cheer, someone decided to play the Scrooge. I've surveyed the mansion and noticed that one bedroom is still unclaimed. I strongly suspect that our thief is still up and about in the house. I was just investigating when I found one of the items we are looking for. If you stop by the dining room, I'll see if you are observant enough to take a look at it. Someone has tried to pick the lock on the study. I can only assume it was our thief. I've found another one of those items we are looking for. If you stop by the lounge, I'll see if you are observant enough to take a look at it. There is a trail of footprints in the snow from a kitchen window to here. And look, gifts are hidden near to the fountain. Very odd indeed.
Hello. Mr. Body bought gifts for all the guests. He's such a generous man. The gifts are being stored in the study until tomorrow morning. I'm afraid I'll have to keep those doors locked. Mr. Body's orders. Coming. Rusty was assigned to help Mrs. White with the meals, so I had to do his job as well as mine. I don't know if they stayed in the kitchen, but they were certainly together all day. Just between you and me, Rusty's not a very good cook, so I do hope he's not helping with the Christmas dinner. Good evening. After dinner, someone went into the dining room and created a terrible mess. I was shocked. Certainly I expected Mr. Body's guests to have better manners than that. The mess was so bad I needed Rusty and Mrs. White to help me clean it up. Hello. Mrs. Meadowbrook took her tea in the library, as she's wont to do. I only mention it because she said that while she was in there, someone opened the south door and then abruptly shut it. She didn't see who it was, but it gave her quite a start. Coming. As if Mrs. White didn't have enough to worry about, she said that one of the male guests kept sticking his head around the kitchen door, offering to help to make dinner. Mrs. White was rather irritated. She politely refused the offer and, whomever it was, eventually went away. Good evening. I do know that Mr. Body had his billfold with him at all times. He's been giving out his Christmas bonuses to the staff, you see. They were quite generous this year, I might add. Mrs. White was very excited and said she's going to use her bonus to buy a shiny gold candlestick she saw in the store window the other day. Hello. Mr. Body always asks that we serve tremendous feasts at Christmas for the guests. The smells of roast duck and mince pies have been wafting through the mansion, whetting everyone's appetites. Of course, none of the guests missed a single meal. Coming. It being Christmas and all, Mr. Body was feeling generous and lent all his jewellery to his guests for dinner. I must say, Miss Scarlet looked stunning with the jade hairpin. Before Dr. Black went to bed, the items were all returned.
As you know, Mr. Body threw a costume party yesterday. Body thought it would be a wonderful way to celebrate midwinter, but something went wrong. Someone among the masked revelers and royal staff is a thief. And most disturbing of all, the good Professor Plum has gone missing. I've just found out that all the guests were gathered together for dinner. Apparently, Mr. Boddy gave a Best Costume Award to Lady Lavender at that time. I was just investigating when I found one of the items we are looking for. If you stop by the library, I'll see if you are observant enough to take a look at it. I've found another one of those items we are looking for. If you stop by the kitchen, I'll see if you are observant enough to take a look at it. This room was the focal point of the costume party. The staff and guests mingled here the entire time. Oh, that was a narrow escape. Why don't I take something back to the evidence room? But don't give up now. You've got this villain on the run. I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask the butler to close the secret passages. It's far too dangerous down there. What with a criminal element about, place the padlocks on the secret passages for the rest of the game.
Coming. Mr. Boddy asked that none of the staff dress in costume. Rusty was quite disappointed, as he had hopes of wearing his pirate costume. Hello. The guests thought it would be clever to borrow items from Mr. Boddy to complete their costumes. A bit odd, if you ask me. But Mr. Boddy agreed and lent out quite a few of his valuable items for the occasion. Good day. Prince Azure refused to wear a costume. I believe I remember him saying it was beneath him. Mr. Boddy replied, to each their own, in his usual magnanimous fashion. Coming. No one was allowed in the kitchen during the party, since Mrs. White was busy preparing meals and didn't want to be disturbed. Hello. If I remember correctly, the guests didn't put on their costumes until after breakfast. There was quite an air of excitement as they headed upstairs to change. No one knew who was going to be in what costume. Good day. Mrs. Peacock very much wanted to go in costume as Napoleon. Sadly, she said she hadn't been able to find the appropriate hat, so wore no costume at all. Perhaps next year. Coming. This morning, I found Mr. Boddy's expensive spyglass in the secret passage. Even more strange, the piece had been damaged with a large dent in the metal on one end. Hello. As I was retiring, I saw someone running through the corridors. Of course, I was alarmed. I wanted to cry out to stop them, but he or she was in costume, and I have no idea who it was.
Oh dear, spring is in the air, and the mansion has thrown open its windows for spring cleaning. Or so the butler tells me. But I haven't come to Mr. Boddy's mansion to assist in the sweeping. A theft has taken place. Someone in this very house has committed the vile act. And I'm here to make sure the thief amongst us is swept up with the dust. I was just investigating when I found one of the items we are looking for. If you stop by the billiard room, I'll see if you are observant enough to take a look at it. I've found another one of those items we are looking for. If you stop by the conservatory, I'll see if you are observant enough to take a look at it. It's come to my attention that all of Mr. Body's items were indoors all day.
Hello. I know that Mr. Body did have breakfast with Mr. Green this morning. Mr. Body asked that I bring him his morning paper while they dined. Lady Lavender showed up just as the meal had finished and just had tea. Coming! Professor Plum arrived just in time for lunch and stayed for dinner as well. He apologized for being late, saying that he had had a meeting of his Egyptologist Society. Social club, more like it. Good day. I saw Rusty help Mr. Green out to his car after midnight. Rusty remembers seeing the letter opener in the hall at this time. I believe Mr. Body was opening the post in the hall and must have left it there. Hello. Prince Azure stopped by during lunch. He had been hoping to talk to Lady Lavender, but was too late as she had already left. He grabbed an apple from the fruit bowl and left shortly thereafter. Coming! Miss Scarlet showed up in the early afternoon and also stayed through into the night. She said that she'd been at her actors' meeting and was sorry she was late. Actors' meeting? I thought one had to work as an actor to attend actors' meetings. Good day. Lady Lavender says she remembers seeing the letter opener and some other desk thing on a table this morning. Hello. Colonel Mustard told me that he saw someone lurking around in one of the north rooms today. Whomever it was acting quite suspiciously. I'm not sure why the good colonel waited until the end of the day to give me this information. Too busy recounting tales of his days in Africa, no doubt. Coming! Mrs. Meadowbrook came by just as tea was being served. She had wanted to come earlier, but instead went to a talk by a Scotsman named Baird. Something about an invention of his called television. Some silly moving pictures box, apparently. Mrs. Meadowbrook was also the last guest to leave.
A storm has been raging all day and night, playing havoc with the lights and the nerves. The sudden plunge into darkness turned out to be the least of everyone's worries. In addition to the howling wind, the torrential rains, and the scraping of the tree branches against the mansion windows, a theft occurred. The theft made all the more terrible by the fact that the thief is still amongst us. I was just investigating when I found one of the items we are looking for. If you stop by the hall, I'll see if you are observant enough to take a look at it. The power's gone out, I'm afraid. No one's going to be able to talk to the butler while he's trying to get it back on. Jolly good hockey sticks, the power is back on. That butler knows his way around a utility box. Bully for him. You can talk now to the butler at your leisure. I've found another one of those items we are looking for. If you stop by the ballroom, I'll see if you are observant enough to take a look at it. Strangely, the door to the secret passage has been forced open from the inside. Forced open rather violently, in fact. Curious. Very curious.
Coming! The guests were scared of the dark. They tried to stay with people who had candles, finding some comfort in the little light they afforded, I suppose. Hello. I remembered to put candelabras in the library and lounge. The candelabras are large, so those 2 rooms were always well lit. That gave the skittish guests some relief, at least. Good evening. Mr. Body locked up his jewellery after lunch. He thought it unwise to leave the items out with all of the strange goings-on in the house. Coming! Colonel Mustard and Mrs. Peacock always had candles with them, but were never in the same room together. I overheard the Colonel say that the dear Mrs. Peacock was getting on his nerves, I believe was the exact quote. Hello. The first time the lights went out, Mr. Body was entertaining all the guests and staff in the conservatory. The shadows cast by the trees frightened them all so much, they left the room and didn't go back. Good evening. Mr. Green, Lady Lavender, and the Colonel played a friendly game of billiards starting at dinner. They were quite enjoying themselves and didn't wrap up their game until right before they went to bed. In fact, I even had to serve them dinner in the billiard room. Coming! The second time the lights went out, Professor Plum spilt soup in his lap. But the other 3 diners managed to finish their meal without incident. Hello. The last time the lights went out was midnight, but by this point, everyone but Miss Scarlet had gone to bed.
Mr. Body invited all of his friends to be with him to commemorate the birth of the first grandchild of the king, the Princess Elizabeth, who arrived in England on April the 21st, 1926. It was meant to be a festive occasion, a day of conversation and shared company. Unfortunately, someone decided to mark the arrival of royalty by acting despicably. I was just investigating when I found one of the items we are looking for. If you stop by the dining room, I'll see if you are observant enough to take a look at it. Are you okay? This thief is more dastardly than we thought. I'll take this opportunity to bring some evidence back to the evidence room. Oh, you're hot on the trail now, though. Good show. Toodle pip. I've found another one of those items we are looking for. If you stop by the hall, I'll see if you are observant enough to take a look at it. I'm happy to say that all of your alibis hold up. None of you are the thief. I've found this clue that I think might lead us to the location of the crime. The paper is water-stained, but if you look closely, you can see that the name of the room ends in the letter Y.
Hello. I don't know if this helps, but I saw Colonel Mustard with Miss Scarlet in the afternoon. Unfortunately, I didn't hear what they were talking about. One of his old war stories or her tales of theatre life, no doubt. Coming. I don't mean to demean her character, but Mrs. White has always wanted the spyglass for herself. She has repeatedly asked our employer for it and been politely rebuffed each time. Certainly, no one else has taken any interest in it. Good day. Mr. Body asked me to polish some of his items, namely the letter opener, crystal paperweight, and the pocket watch. I did this as the guests were eating dinner. Hello. At dusk, I passed Rusty and Mrs. White unpacking the patio furniture and preparing the house for the warmer weather. I remember Rusty complaining, "It's earlier every year," he said. "Next thing you know, Body'll have us wearing bathing suits in the snow." Coming. The study and billiard room were being cleaned from before dawn until dinner and were off limits to the guests. Of course, I spent most of the day shooing them away. Apparently, many of them don't like being told where they can and cannot go. Good day. Despite all the trouble Mrs. White went to setting the dinner table, Mr. Green and the esteemed Prince Azure decided to have dinner in the lounge. Thankfully, they didn't spill anything. Hello. Mrs. Peacock was with Professor Plum in the early afternoon. Plum was explaining another one of his fascinating theories on ancient Egypt, no doubt. Coming. I can assure you, all of Mr. Body's belongings were accounted for by late morning. I always take an inventory before Rusty and Mrs. White prepare the house for summer.
Mr. Body and his staff had been preparing for weeks for a grand ball. The butler sent out the invitations, hired the musicians, and arranged for a full day of food and drink for all Body's close friends. It was to be an all-day music event with a quartet, and then the ball at night. No one realized until it was too late that someone in the house had added burglary to the agenda.
Hello. Mr. Body kept the party running smoothly, using his pocket watch to keep both the guests and musicians on schedule. He's a master of hurrying people along without making them feel rushed. Body's quite the host. Good day. Mr. Green and the Professor left the party before the quartet's tea-time performance and did not return. Who knows what business called them away? A bit rude, if you ask me. Coming. At midnight, after all the guests had left, Mr. Body asked me to get his billfold to pay the musicians. Body was so happy with them that he asked them to come back and provide music before dinner at his birthday party. Hello. As Mrs. White prepared for dinner, she noted that someone was lurking about in the West Wing. She said it distressed her quite awfully.
I was just investigating when I found one of the items we are looking for. If you stop by the Rose Garden, I'll see if you are observant enough to take a look at it. I've found another one of those items we are looking for. If you stop by the hall, I'll see if you are observant enough to take a look at it. Mr. Body said that all of his items were indoors for the event. Are you okay? This thief is more dastardly than we thought. I'll take this opportunity to bring some evidence back to the evidence room. Oh, you're hot on the trail now, though. Good show. Toodle pip.
Coming. I overheard the violinist saying he saw Miss Scarlet when she was last on stage. Of course, he was an older gentleman, as I'm afraid it's been some time since she's been in the spotlight. Just after the quartet finished performing, he even asked Miss Scarlet for an autograph. Hello. The grand ball started after dinner. All the guests were there. The music was magnificent. Good day. Mr. Body was busy writing letters in the library before the guests arrived. I'm afraid he's fallen behind in his correspondence and owes quite a few friends letters. Coming. The musicians stored their instruments in the conservatory and rested there during their breaks. Mr. Body asked that none of the guests use the room during the party to give the musicians some privacy.
One week shy of Mr. Body's 30th birthday, the day he comes into his full inheritance, Body arranged to meet with some of his friends to discuss private business matters. Mr. Body has had to put up with a lot of bad behavior lately, but according to his butler, the last 24 hours has been almost unbearable. The guests have been avoiding each other all day, creating quite a circus. And to make matters worse, amidst this melodrama, there was a theft. Body's nerves are frayed. This theft might just be the last straw. I've just learned something that might be important. Mr. Body was meeting with guests yesterday to go over private issues concerning his impending inheritance. He met with them one by one outside at the fountain. I was just investigating when I found one of the items we are looking for. If you stop by the billiard room, I'll see if you are observant enough to take a look at it. I've found another one of those items we are looking for. If you stop by the lounge, I'll see if you are observant enough to take a look at it. Mrs. Peacock met with Body just after Mr. Green did. Are you okay? This thief is more dastardly than we thought. I'll take this opportunity to bring some evidence back to the evidence room. Oh, you're hot on the trail now, though. Good show. Toodle pip.
Hello. Mrs. Peacock and her daughter were clearly upset with the Colonel and spent their time in the wing that was as far away from him as possible. Who knows what quarrel they're all having? Best not to stick one's nose in others' business, I always say. Coming! Miss Scarlet and Mrs. Peacock were the first to arrive at breakfast. Miss Scarlet kept asking her mother what her business was with Mr. Body. Mrs. Peacock kept refusing to tell her. None of my business, really. Good day. Mr. Green seemed to be angry with everyone. What a cantankerous fellow. Still, he seemed most angry with Plum and stayed as far away from the professor as possible. Hello. Professor Plum spent all day in the West Wing, muttering to himself and clearly agitated. Odd chap. Coming! After his last appointment, I was very surprised to find Mr. Body in a foul mood. He was so upset, he sent the guests home. Then he dismissed the staff for the rest of the day and asked that I leave him alone. It was all very disturbing and quite unlike him. Good day. The Professor and Colonel Mustard found themselves in the same room at one point during the day. After an awkward silence, the Colonel huffed some excuse and returned to the ballroom. Hello. Some of the guests' requests are getting quite out of hand. Miss Scarlet, for example, asked to be served lunch in the lounge. Such an inconvenience on Mrs. White. I made up my mind to say something. But when I arrived to serve her, Miss Scarlet was facing the east window and was quite upset. Coming! After dismissing the guests and staff, Mr. Body asked me to prepare his desk items so that he could do some work in anticipation of his 30th birthday next week. He seemed to have quite a weight on his shoulders.